So first of all, congratulations on what's turned out to be an absolute epic audiobook on the highest scale. Certainly not a facsimile of a book, but totally the real thing, and a lot more. Before we get into things, you must be very proud of the finished product, released in December 20, I believe.
I was absolutely astounded by the reviews that were given to me with regards to the audiobook, and obviously I was very happy with the quality of the work and everything that I put into it.
As you say, 12 years in the making, based on a true story of events that took place circa 1995, we kind of think. In Whitby, of course, attending the Whitby Gothic weekend, more specifically the Whitby Gothic Ball. I guess the first question would be, how clear was the memory, or the memory today of 26 years ago?
The memory of that time has never left me, really. In fact, to be quite honest with you, when I started getting into the writing of the book, I started looking at it in much finer detail, and I realised just how important it was to tell the story in exactly the way it happened in that short period of 2.5 days.
Yeah, clearly one of those once-in-a-lifetime experiences on a whole different level. I mean, we all kind of have romantic liaisons and stuff with people, but yours is, well, 199 steps more than anybody else. You see where I go there with that, can't you?
I know exactly where you're going.
So it's a tale of romance, a jacket, a ring, a mirror, etc., etc. Quickly develops into a bizarre turn of events for you. I mean, to this day, it must still blow your mind what actually happened.
Oh yes, the story blew my mind, really, and the people that actually sent those reviews, they said, like, well, was it actually true? Did that really happen? And the thing about it was absolutely for real.
For those that don't know of the Whitby Gothic Ball, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Lots of costumes, kind of a fashion parade as such, and Trevor Rooney of the 1990s, in the business of ghost walking in the city of York, was already kind of self-made in order to go to a ball, look-wise.
Yes.
Could you explain how you looked?
What I did was I emulated the Gary Oldman look from the Dracula movie of Bram Stoker. I wore a grey frock coat with a grey waistcoat and grey trousers with a grey topper, and I went out of my way to get the hair extensions with all the curly locks. I even wore the blue shades, to look the part for the Goth Festival that night.
So without giving away the story of the entire book here, you have freely given chapter 2 to people in order to get them into the story, basically. And just a quick overview of chapter 2, and then if you would kind of elaborate on what happened there. You're driving to Whitby, former girlfriend Amelia, you meet up with another girlfriend called Sabrina, and the three of you end up at the Whitby Gothic Ball, where there subsequently the main character of the book introduces themselves and promptly turns your life upside down for a while. Yeah. Would you care to... The gypsy girl, of course, the main character. Do you want to elaborate on what happened there in chapter 2?
Yeah, chapter 2, I kind of leave it on a cliffhanger, and I give it away for free, which is about 15 minutes long. And it kind of tells the story of when I first met her in the ballroom, when she grabbed me by my arm and sort of gesticulated for me to get lower to her so she could speak to me. And in my ear she said, "That ring you're wearing is mine." And then from that point onwards she just took hold of me and took me outside the pavilion and onto the pier, where we had what you might consider to be a very elusive kiss.
So the morning after the night before, you're looking out the window of the Royal Hotel in Whitby, thinking about the previous night and the potential of a great book. that's coming out, even though it was the early stage of the story, did it cross your mind at all that 100 years prior, Bram Stoker was doing the same thing for Dracula?
In fact, the girls were still lying in the bed in the bedroom. I sort of climbed over the top of them and pulled a chair up and opened the curtains to look at the perspective of Whitby Harbour and across to, Whitby Abbey, where of course, it's the whole Dracula thing really. And when I sat there for about an hour, I thought about the night before and considered who this woman might be, because as you'll find when you listen to the book, she just vanished without trace, and I never saw her again until I went to Sheffield.
So what actually made you start writing The Magic Jacket and the Ring?
Yeah, what it was, when I was on my travels, I was keeping diaries of the journey, but when I got back to England, I decided to write a novel called Deadly Nightshade, which was a Victorian thriller about York. But every now and again, I kept on finding myself going back to the moment in Whitby and started writing The Magic Jacket and the Ring in between. So there were bits of Deadly Nightshade and The Magic Jacket and the Ring, and it just got to some point in time where I decided that I was going to fix my attention on one of the two novels, and The Magic Jacket and the Ring had to play priority.
So what actually made you start writing The Magic Jacket and the Ring?
Yeah, it was the lockdown that did it for me, because once I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do the Ghost Walk in York because they were going to shut me down, I decided to seriously look at the book, and the cost of publishing it and printing it as a paperback would have been too expensive. So I decided to invest my time into recording it as an audio in my studio at home.
So at the beginning of the recording process of the audiobook, was there a theme you had in mind of how you wanted to present the book?
It's a good question. Being a musician is one of the great inspirations for the book. And what it was many, many years ago, I used to listen to Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, and if you know that particular double album, you'll know what I'm talking about. So what I wanted to do was do something similar to that, but based around the story within The Magic Jacket and the Ring. And of course, musically speaking, it had to be done in a gothic kind of way, with that sort of music that would set the mood in the background when people were listening to my voice telling the tale. But I was very keen to make sure that it was absolutely perfect, and that was a task. But when I finally got it together and worked out which tracks worked best in between the storylines, it was worth all the many, many hours that I put into it.
Some people may or may not know that you are a music producer. You did all the backing to the book, which was absolutely outstanding. And you really wasn't going to settle. You threw everything at it. You really was not going to settle for anything less than perfection, really.
I'm a perfectionist, and I knew that the music for the book had to be absolutely perfect in every possible way that you could imagine, because without the music, the audiobook would never be the same. I would love to produce a musical version of The Magic Jacket and the Ring that lasts about 45 minutes. Pure music with singing and sometimes special effects. It would be a great way to present the book in pure music, but also in the future perhaps to turn it into a theatrical presentation on stage, or maybe, if I'm lucky, have it done as a TV drama.
Then I wandered off and started to walk around the room. Mozart's music filled the air all around. This room was low lit, and I was now walking amongst a cluster of large round tables with white linen draped over them. Each one of them had silver candelabra adorning them with white candles. Their flames flickered and swayed due to the movements of the people. Then, suddenly out of nowhere, I felt someone grasp my hand, and I looked around to find this girl seated, pulling me towards her in a gentle manner. She was stunning. She was absolutely beautiful. Her dark eyes were staring directly up into mine. She wore a beautiful bright yellow Georgian gown. She wore her hair in ringlets, and she looked absolutely spellbinding. She'd taken a firm grasp of my hand as she beckoned me to get within earshot of her. And then she whispered words into my ear. She said,
"That ring you're wearing is mine."
And as she spoke, I became aware of her trying to remove the ring from my finger. She then squeezed my hand even tighter and rose quickly from her seat, and she took me by the arm and speedily marched me across the hall in full view of everyone. Her actions were done with haste as she walked us quickly down the corridor and towards the exit door of the building. She then pulled the door open and walked me out into a blustery and howling wind. I could clearly hear the sound of the ocean waves crashing below us as she led me up the pier and away from the pavilion, where the sounds of the seagulls screeching seemed to intensify. Then, suddenly, she stopped walking with me and she pushed me up against the white railings, where then she started kissing me. The world at that moment became a blurred place where time seemed to stand still right there and then. All the noises around us seemed to amplify. It was a moment of sheer madness between two complete strangers. It was a kiss that seemed to last forever. It had a great sense of sensuality and meaning about it. It felt like we could have been lovers for years, but we were not. This brief moment plunged me into one of the oddest experiences I'd ever had with any woman in my life. Was she doing this because of her interest in the ring I was wearing on my finger? Whatever it was, we were still kissing passionately, and then, suddenly, the kiss ended. She took me by the arm again and speedily marched me to the pavilion door, where there she let go of my arm and stepped back and looked at me before she pushed the door open and walked in. I quickly stepped in behind her and took her by the arm again and started walking down the corridor with her towards the ballroom. Then suddenly, a man dressed in beautiful finery stepped in front of us. We stopped. She released my arm. He looked me in the eye, and then he said, "Where have you been with my woman?" I took her by the arm again to protect her. He then grabbed her other arm and dragged her violently down the corridor towards the exit door and out onto the pier outside. The door suddenly closed and I ran towards it and pulled it open and ran outside to find that they were nowhere to be seen. I looked to my left and to the right. I could see the pier was clearly lit by the Victorian gas lamps along its length, despite the Seafret, and the mist. They had literally vanished like ghosts into the night. I started walking around searching for them. I felt uncomfortable about being out there on my own due to the circumstances. I stopped walking and stepped forward to look over the rails of the pier and down onto the violent crashing waves below as they roared and rumbled underneath me. The old wooden planks of the piers seemed to be vibrating under my feet, and I felt uneasy about being out there on my own amongst the mist and the noise that pervaded the air around me. I was now actually very concerned about this stunning woman. Despite me not knowing of her, her man, whoever he was, had shown great anger towards her by the very way he dragged her away from me in that corridor. It was such an unpleasant experience, and I felt quite guilty that I'd not been able to rescue her in what would be considered her time of need. That man of hers surely looked like the kind of person you would not want to cross on a dark night. So I started walking back to the pavilion and thought about the only thing that she'd said and remembered her saying,
"That ring you're wearing is mine."
Then, as I stood at the entrance door of the pavilion, I realised that I didn't even know her name. That one fleeting kiss had now created so much havoc in my mind. But then, as I pushed the door open into the building, I had concluded that their disappearance was probably one of the best illusions I had ever seen. I walked down that same corridor and back into the ballroom to find Sabrina and Amelia now surrounded by men and women, seemingly having good fun. Then I asked the girls and the people in the group if they'd seen me with this woman in the yellow, elaborate ballroom gown, and they all said no. Then Sabrina and Amelia looked at me rather suspiciously for a moment before conversations resumed between all of them. Then the women in there started talking to me and were escorting me away with them to meet their friends. Yes, we all socialised and had much fun, and I often asked people if they knew of the girl that was wearing the 17th century yellow ballroom gown. But no one seemed to know of her. In fact, no one seems to have actually seen her. And I found that odd, for I knew that she would have stood out in a crowd. And if she'd still been there, she would have gained great attention by the way she'd actually dressed and looked. But by some strange fluke, I'd met her, had this strange privilege to kiss her, and then, mysteriously, worry about her. The only telltale signs of her former presence was a faint smell of perfume, musky and rose-like, that she'd left lingering on my clothes and on my face. Then, suddenly, amidst these thoughts, the lights came on in the room, in tandem with an announcement on the microphone that the ball was ending, and it was time for us all to depart. But on the way back to the hotel, I tried to talk to Sabrina and Amelia about her, but they were a little too merry to have a serious discussion with me. As we all staggered up the hill in the freezing cold to the hotel, which was perched upon the cliff top.
I've been thinking about you. I've been worrying about you. So where did you go to? I need to see you again. I think I fell in love with you. I need to see you again. I can't help thinking about you. It happened in Whitby. It was such a beautiful kiss you gave me in Whitby. No signs of her could I find in Whitby. No signs of her could I find in Whitby. You've disappeared into nowhere. You've disappeared into nowhere. You've disappeared into nowhere. You've disappeared into nowhere. You've disappeared into nowhere.